Welcome back to another episode of the Business English Podcast. On today's episode, we're diving into a highly essential skill. Sorry, chap, could I jump in there for a second? Well, could you just hold that thought for a minute, please? As I was saying, a highly essential skill for effective communication in a professional environment, and that is how to interrupt someone politely in business English. Interruptions are bound to happen in the course of business conversations, be it in meetings, conference calls, or one-to-one chats. However, it's crucial to interrupt someone with tact and politeness to maintain a positive and professional atmosphere, not to mention your own professional integrity. It is such a vital skill, yet hugely misunderstood by so many professionals. If you are unsure not only how to interrupt, but how to deal with such an interruption, then this is the episode you've been looking for. In this episode, we'll provide you with several sets of phrases you can use to interrupt someone politely, as well as some techniques and considerations to ensure your interruptions are well received. And we're not going to stop there. We will also be turning the tables and diving into the phrases you can use when you are the one being interrupted. In this scenario, we will be providing phrases to close the interruption down professionally and also ones that allow you to indicate for the assertive dialogue to continue. In addition to the phrases that handle an interruption, we shall also add a few pointers to help you decide the most optimum way forward. After all, sometimes it's difficult to think straight when you're put on the spot with an interruption, so these pointers should help give you some clarity in the moment of need. So, without further ado, or any more interruptions for that matter, Go Gadget intro. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Business English Podcast, helping professionals communicate more effectively, more confidently, and with impact. With your host, Rob, from Energetic English. Let's get down to business. Now, as we mentioned during our introduction, we will first turn our attention to the matter of how to interrupt politely. As we have already stated, there are numerous situations in which this may actually be necessary. So I want to make clear that an interruption with a positively intended outcome should not be viewed as rude necessarily, but rather an important factor that may assist in maintaining a high-quality narrative. Situations where the speaker may make an erroneous statement that begins to mislead or confuse the audience, or where there is a time-sensitive matter, such as an urgent call from a colleague, client, or family member, and even to add or seek clarity for the benefit of you or the wider audience, where doing so will add more value to the dialogue instead of detracting from it. In these types of situations, an interruption may not only be necessary, but also fairly welcome. So please do not discount the idea of interrupting on the grounds of you being rude. You may find that the juice is actually worth the squeeze. So, now that we are all a little bit more comfortable with the idea of interrupting, let us now discuss how we should interrupt before looking at what we should say when we interrupt someone. Here are 8 techniques and considerations to keep in mind when interrupting someone. 1. Timing. It's essential to choose the right moment to interrupt. Wait for a pause in the conversation or when the speaker has just finished a point. This way, your interruption will be less intrusive and more natural. 2. Body language. Use appropriate body language to signal your intent to make an interruption. Make eye contact, slightly raise your hand, or lean forward to show that you're about to interject. This helps the speaker recognize your intention without feeling cut off. 3. Be brief. When you interrupt, make sure your point is concise and relevant. By keeping your interruption short, you show respect for the speaker's time and allow them to continue with their thoughts. 4. Apologize. Starting your interruption with an apology, such as, "I'm sorry to interrupt," can help soften the interruption and make it more polite. 5. Tone of voice. Use a friendly and respectful tone when interrupting. Avoid sounding aggressive or confrontational, as this may create tension or conflict in the conversation. 6. Give credit. If you're interrupting to build on someone's point or offer a counter-argument, acknowledge the speaker's contribution by saying something like, I agree with you on your point about X, and I'd like to add Y, or that's a great observation, but I think it's important to consider Z. 7. Be aware of cultural differences. Remember that different cultures may have different norms for interrupting. What may be considered polite in one culture might be seen as rude in another. Be sensitive to these differences and adapt your approach accordingly. And 8. Talking over one another. Following on from the last point, in the English-speaking world, it is important to understand that speaking over each other when talking is considered rude. That is, not allowing the speaker to finish or cutting them off before they have concluded their idea. I do note that there are a number of cultures where this is perfectly fine and the style of their communication, but I would advise against doing it in English, and certainly in business English. If you are going to interrupt, do so using the following statements and the aforementioned considerations. With these 8 considerations, you will be able to mitigate any negative feeling when interrupting. So now we know how to interrupt. Let us now look at what phrases we can use for that interruption. With our checks and balances in place, let us now look at 6 phrases that will correctly position our piece of communication in the most professional way possible. As usual, I will be repeating twice before leaving that magic pause for you to drill, note down, and internalize each of the following statements. Here we go. 1. Excuse me for a moment, but... Excuse me for a moment, but... 2. I'm sorry to interrupt, but... I'm sorry to interrupt, but... 3. If I may interject here. If I may interject here. 4. Could I quickly add something? Could I quickly add something? 5. I apologize for interrupting, but... I apologize for interrupting, but... 6. May I just jump in here for a second? May I just jump in here for a second? Using these phrases as a leading statement as you interrupt will afford you the professional stance you need in order for you to communicate your point. Remember that the speaker may close you down and say no, which they are completely in their right to do. However, using the aforementioned phrases will mitigate the chances of this happening as you are playing by the rules, so to speak. Right, so with our phrases and accompanying considerations for interrupting taken care of, let us now turn the tables and change the position in this scenario. Let us now move from being the interrupter to being the interrupted. Now, aside from the obvious issues that being interrupted causes, such as losing track of your dialogue, diverting attention, and losing momentum, not to mention fluency challenges, it can be difficult to know what to say and whether to allow the interruption to continue or not. In order for us to navigate this frustrating issue of being interrupted, we shall look at the 2 possible outcomes of when dealing with an interruption. They are allowing the interruption or to discourage it. We shall look at phrases for both in turn, in addition to some reasons to help you decide what to do when you're in the moment and your head is spinning. Firstly, let's look at a number of phrases for allowing an interruption, followed by some reasons for allowing it. As before, I'll be repeating them twice and leaving that magic pause. 1. Sure, go ahead. Sure, go ahead. 2. Please feel free to jump in. Please feel free to jump in. 3. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. 4. Yes, what would you like to add? Yes, what would you like to add? 5. That's an interesting point. Please elaborate. That's an interesting point. Please elaborate. So, with these phrases for allowing an interruption, here are some reasons for allowing it. For example, the interrupter may have a valuable piece of information or a different perspective to contribute. Encouraging open communication can also foster a collaborative and inclusive environment, and allowing interruptions can lead to more dynamic and engaging discussions. So, now let us look at 5 phrases for discouraging the interruption. 1. Could you please hold that thought until I finish my point? Could you please hold that thought until I finish my point? 2. I appreciate your input, but please let me finish what I'm saying first. I appreciate your input, but please let me finish what I'm saying first. 3. I'd like to hear your thoughts, but can we save them for the Q&A? I'd like to hear your thoughts, but can we save them for the Q&A? 4. Please allow me to complete my statement before we discuss that. Please allow me to complete my statement before we discuss that. 5. I understand your eagerness, but let's address that after the meeting. I understand your eagerness, but let's address that after the meeting. And here are some reasons for discouraging the interruption. Maintaining the focus on the current topic can lead to more productive discussion. Respecting the speaker's time and ensuring that they can complete their thoughts is essential in a professional setting. And discouraging interruptions can help prevent derailing the conversation or agenda. Remember, the key to effectively dealing with interruptions is to strike a balance between fostering open communication and maintaining the structure and flow of the conversation. By using these phrases and considering the reasons behind allowing or discouraging interruptions, you can successfully manage these situations in a business context. So, that brings us neatly to the end of this episode on how to interrupt someone politely in business English, and of course looking at how to handle those interruptions too. So in conclusion, learning how to interrupt someone politely in business English is an essential skill for effective communication in a professional setting. By using appropriate phrases, timing your interruptions well, and being mindful of body language, tone, and cultural differences, you can ensure that your interruptions are received positively and contribute to a constructive dialogue. Equally, we have discussed what we can say to allow or discourage an interruption when we are ourselves interrupted, and how to make the best call in the moment. So, all in all, a great comprehensive toolkit for professionals on interruptions in business English. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in, and if you have any questions or topic suggestions, please send us an email at rob@thebusinessenglishpodcast.com. Until next time, keep it strictly business. You have been listening to the Business English Podcast. Remember to subscribe, leave a review, and we'll see you next time.